John Wesley founded the Methodist movement in the 1700s. Wesley believed that all people could know the incredible love of God, experience His life-transforming power, and serve the marginalized and vulnerable. He also believed that it was up to Jesus' followers to get this word out.
The Methodist movement found its way from England to North America in 1860. B.T. Roberts and other Methodists founded the Free Methodist Church in an effort to renew Wesley's vision. Around the same time in Canada, Methodists were fractured into 7 different denominations, and attempts to unite them bothered some, including Robert Lovelace, a member of a Methodist church in Toronto, Ontario.
In 1873, Lovelace found a copy of B.T. Roberts' Earnest Christian magazine in a post office. He was moved by what he read about the passion and vision of the Free Methodist Church, and he invited Roberts to speak in Toronto.
3 years later, B.T. Roberts sent Charles Sage as a missionary to Canada. Sage was joined by Daniel Marston in 1878, and their work for the next several years involved meeting with Canadian Methodists who were troubled by the move away from John Wesley's fundamental teachings.
These discontented Methodists formed new Free Methodist congregations throughout southwestern Ontario. In 1880, B.T. Roberts held a meeting in Galt, Ontario, to organize the Canadian Annual Conference, and 3 years later, Reverend Albert Sims was appointed as the first Canadian superintendent overseeing the work of the Free Methodist Church in Canada. Other early conference appointments included both men and women.
Over the next 40 years, more annual conferences spread across the country. In 1920, Canadian leaders gathered in Sarnia, Ontario, where a Canadian identity emerged.
New goals included the development of the Canadian Free Methodist Herald magazine, founding Canadian pastoral training schools, and the establishment of a Canadian executive board. The next 40 years were dedicated to fulfilling these new goals. In 1974, the Canadian Jurisdictional Conference was approved, and Bishop Donald Bastian was elected as Canada's first bishop.
Bastian led the Free Methodist Church in Canada for 20 years through growth, leadership development, and organizational maturity. 16 years later, the Canadian Jurisdictional Conference became the Canadian General Conference. At the 1993 General Conference, a motion was put forward by a thorough study of denominational structures and procedures. This became newly elected Bishop Gary Walsh's key assignment for the next several years.
What emerged from this process was a renewed emphasis on the pivotal role of local churches in advancing the gospel in communities across Canada. Bishop Keith Elford continued the process of implementing the new structure and systems, which included the creation of a regional pastoral network, which meets for mutual support, fellowship, and connection.
In 2017, the FMCIC elected Bishop Cliff Fletcher with a mandate to understand, what kind of church does Canada need? In response to this question, the FMCIC has committed to developing a friendship with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Our intercultural engagement team has also pointed us to new Canadians by partnering with international student ministries.
We continue to minister in Sri Lanka, Ghana, India, as well as partnering with international childcare and Tier Fund.
The FMCIC has also appointed regional coaches in order to have more pastoral contact and local church support.
Task forces have been formed to consider racial justice and ethnic equity.
And the FMCIC's relationship with the LGBTQ2S+ community.
A team has been created to mobilize churches in their ministry to family and children. All of these initiatives, and more like them, are about positioning the FMCIC to introduce people to Jesus.
Change the world one person at a time and alleviate suffering. We still are free.